They didn't lose me in the woods. They left me there. My son's wife looked me in the eyes when she handed me that empty jug and said she needed an extra pair of hands to fetch water from the stream. We walked together, but when I bent to catch my breath, she took the lantern from me. I heard her boots crunch on the leaves as she walked back toward camp, faster, then faster still. By the time I straightened up, her light was gone, and with it, any trace of a path. I am 76 years old. I know what it means when a younger woman, full of energy and spite, decides you're in the way. I knew Camilla had little patience for me. She never liked the way I folded clothes or asked questions about her cooking. She liked to remind me, in small ways, that I was a guest in my own son's world. But I never thought she would go this far. The forest at night is not silent. It breathes, cracks, hisses. I leaned against a pine trunk, the bark biting into my palms, and listened. Somewhere far off, an owl called. Somewhere closer, water trickled. No flashlight, no coat, no food, just the clothes I'd worn around the fire. They had brought me camping to show me a family tradition, and then they discarded me like I was an old coat left on a stump. I took small steps, careful not to twist my ankle on the roots. The moon helped, its thin light slipping through branches, silvering the pathless ground. My joints ached with every move, but I kept walking toward the sound of water. I told myself, one more step, then another. The stream was narrow, shallow, the kind children splash through. I cupped a handful to my lips and forced myself to think. Streams lead to roads. Roads lead to people. That was the only logic left. I followed the water for what felt like hours. My knees stiffened. My breath grew ragged. And I thought of George, my late husband, who once told me, "If you ever get lost, find the water and follow it down." He taught the children the same, though they never listened. He would have laughed at the sight of me, an old woman hunched like a willow, refusing to fall. When the ground widened and the trees thinned, I saw a smear of light on the horizon, headlights on a distant road. My legs nearly gave out, but I clutched a branch like a cane and dragged myself forward. Gravel crunched underfoot at last. A highway, humming with night trucks. I raised my hand, palm out, the universal signal of need. The first two cars swerved away. The third slowed. A long semi with its cab lights glowing amber. The driver rolled down the window, a man with a lined face and kind eyes. "Ma'am," he said, "what in God's name are you doing out here?" "Getting home," I answered simply. My voice cracked, but I kept it steady. I was left behind. He studied me for a moment, then climbed down and helped me into the cab. Warmth rushed around me, the smell of diesel, coffee, and tobacco. He didn't pepper me with questions, just handed me a thermos and said, "Sip slow. We'll get you where you need to be." I gave him my address. As he drove, he pulled out a small recorder, said he used it for notes on the road. "If you don't mind," he said, "tell me what happened, just in case." And so I did. My words fell into that machine, time-stamped, undeniable. Evidence. By the time we stopped at a diner, the clock read 3:15 a.m. He bought me scrambled eggs and toast, wrote his name, Hank Callahan, on the receipt, and said, "Keep this. It proves the time." I folded it into my pocket like a lifeline. When I finally saw the familiar outline of my street in the gray dawn, I felt no triumph, only a kind of hollow steadiness. I had survived the woods. But something darker was waiting for me at home, because my son's house was not my son's anymore. It was mine. and when I opened the door, I knew they had been living in it as if nothing had happened. The truck rumbled away, its tail lights shrinking into the mist, and I was left standing on the edge of my own driveway. The sky was paling, a thin wash of gray-blue before sunrise. My house looked exactly as I had left it. White siding, sagging porch swing, the flower bed where I'd planted marigolds in the spring. But something in the stillness was wrong. The curtains in the front window moved just slightly, as if someone had been watching and let them fall back into place. I walked up the steps slowly, testing each creak of the boards under my feet. My key was still on my ring. They hadn't changed the locks, not yet. The door opened with the same familiar scrape, and for a heartbeat, I thought maybe I had imagined everything. Maybe I'd stumble inside to an empty kitchen and the hum of my refrigerator. Instead, I heard laughter, a kettle whistling, the shuffle of slippers on my linoleum floor. I stood in the doorway to my own kitchen. Camilla was there, hair tied back, wearing my apron. She was frying bacon in my pan as if the night in the woods had never happened. At the table sat my son Ethan, coffee cup in hand, flipping through the morning paper. Their daughter, my granddaughter, sat barefoot, scrolling through her phone, toast crumbs scattered in front of her. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Camilla turned, spatula in hand. Her eyes flicked over me, sharp and quick, before settling into a smile that didn't reach her face. "Oh, you're back," she said, as if I'd only gone out for a walk. Ethan set down his cup, his jaw tightening. "Mom, where have you been? You scared us." I looked at him, my only child, and in his expression I saw the faintest shadow of guilt, but mostly annoyance. "Where have I been?" I repeated. My voice didn't shake, though my hands wanted to. "Ask your wife." Camilla's smile twitched, then held. "You must have gotten turned around. The woods can be confusing at night." "Confusing," I echoed. The word tasted bitter. Their daughter looked between us, sensing the tension, but saying nothing. Ethan rose and tried to put a hand on my shoulder, but I stepped back. "Mom, let's not make a scene. You're home now. That's what matters." "No," I said softly. "What matters is that I was left there, on purpose." His eyes slid away. He didn't deny it. That was enough for me. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I turned, walked to the hallway, and fetched my small overnight bag from the closet. My phone had been in the bottom, battery drained. I plugged it in, sat down in the armchair, and waited for the screen to light. The house went quiet behind me. I heard whispers, a slammed cupboard, the squeak of a chair. They were already circling, thinking how to contain this, how to turn it around. When my phone came alive, I began to work. First call, the non-emergency police line. I gave them my name, my address, a simple statement: abandoned during a camping trip, returned home by a truck driver, wanted the incident logged. The dispatcher asked if I wanted an officer sent out. I said no, not yet, just a record. She gave me the case number. I wrote it down. Second call, urgent care, appointment for later that morning. I knew enough to understand the value of documentation. The stiffness in my knees, the scratches on my arms, the dehydration. All of it needed to be on paper, signed by a physician. Evidence. Third, Hank. He had scribbled his number under his name on the diner receipt. He answered on the second ring. "Ma'am, you make it home safe?" "I did," I said. "Would you mind if I listed you as a witness? You picked me up near Route 9, drove me into town, and bought me a meal. That might matter later. Of course, he said without hesitation. You've got my word. I thanked him, folded the receipt back into my pocket, and leaned my head against the chair. My house smelled of bacon and coffee, but to me, it smelled of trespass. At 10 o'clock sharp, I walked out the door without a word. Ethan called after me. Mom, wait, let's talk. But I kept walking. A taxi took me to the clinic. The nurse frowned at my low blood pressure, at the scratches on my hands, at the way my shoes were caked with mud. The doctor wrote it all down, ordered fluids, and gave me a note. Exposure and mild dehydration after overnight outdoor incident. That paper went into my purse like a weapon. By the time I stepped back onto the sidewalk, the sun was high. My legs ached, but my back was straight. I wasn't just an old woman who got lost. I was a woman who had been left behind, and I had the proof. And if they thought I was going to let it pass quietly, they had badly misjudged me. When I returned from the clinic, the house looked calm from the outside. My marigold still nodded in the heat. The porch swing still creaked with the breeze. But inside, the calm was staged. Ethan sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open, a stack of mail beside him, as though he were the master of the house. Camilla leaned against the counter, her arms folded, eyes sharp as nails. Their daughter was nowhere in sight. Mom, Ethan said, his voice measured, almost too soft. We need to clear the air. I set my purse down on the sideboard, taking my time. Yes, we do. He rubbed his jaw. Camilla says you misunderstood. It wasn't her intention to leave you behind. She thought you were right behind her. Camilla's mouth twitched. The woods can be confusing at night. The same excuse. Rehearsed. Hollow. I reached into my purse and placed the doctor's note on the table. The paper slid across the polished wood like a blade. Exposure and dehydration. Time stamped. Witnessed. Ethan's face tightened. Camilla's arms uncrossed, then crossed again. I pulled out the diner receipt, Hank's name scrawled in ballpoint ink. This man picked me up on Route 9 at 3 in the morning. He gave me food, wrote his name, and will testify if necessary. I also logged the incident with the police. Case numbers written here. I tapped the corner of the note. Silence spread through the kitchen, heavy as a stone. Finally, Ethan exhaled. Mom, no one's denying it was unfortunate, but dragging outsiders into this? Police, doctors, truck drivers? It makes us look like what? I asked quietly. Like the kind of people who leave an old woman in the woods? His lips thinned. Camilla muttered something under her breath. I leaned on the back of a chair, steadying myself. This is my house. My name is on the deed, not yours. I let you live here out of kindness, out of family loyalty. But kindness does not extend to cruelty. You crossed a line. Mom, Ethan started again, this time sharper. Don't make this bigger than it is. Families fight. People get upset. You're overreacting. Overreacting. That word. It had followed me for decades. When I insisted on paying the bills on time, when I asked for respect at the dinner table, when I wanted to be heard. Always overreacting. I straightened, my hand leaving the chair. No, not this time. I walked into the living room, opened the drawer in the old oak desk, and pulled out a folder. Property deeds, insurance papers, my will, all neatly stacked. I tucked them under my arm. I'll be consulting a lawyer. From this point forward, all discussions will go through her. Camilla scoffed. A lawyer? Really? I turned to face her. Yes, really. Because what happened out there wasn't an accident. And I won't be treated as if I imagined it. Ethan rose from the table, his chair scraping hard against the floor. "Mom, you're being unreasonable." "Reasonable," I said softly, "is what kept me silent all these years. Reasonable is what let you borrow money you never repaid. Reasonable is what let you and your wife move into my home without rent, without gratitude, without decency. Reasonable nearly killed me in those woods. I am finished with reasonable." For a moment I thought he might shout. His jaw clenched, his fists tightened. But he didn't. He sat back down, heavily, like a man realizing a game was slipping out of his hands. I left them there, in the kitchen that still smelled of bacon grease and lies. I carried my folder and purse out the door, locking it behind me. The slam of the deadbolt was final, satisfying. At the curb, I dialed a taxi. The dispatcher asked for the destination. "Downtown," I said, "to Ramirez and Cole, attorneys at law." The words tasted strong, like steel in the mouth of a woman who had been underestimated one time too many. The law office was in a narrow brick building downtown, squeezed between a florist and a pawnshop. I had passed it many times over the years without ever imagining I would need it. But that morning, as I climbed the steps with my folder clutched to my chest, I felt no hesitation. My shoes echoed on the tiled floor as I entered the reception area. The young woman at the desk looked up. "Good morning, ma'am. Do you have an appointment?" "No," I said, "but I need to speak with someone about elder abuse and property rights." My voice was calm, clear. It startled even me. She blinked, then nodded quickly. "One moment, please." Within minutes, I was sitting across from a woman with steady brown eyes and a firm handshake. "Ava Ramirez," she introduced herself. "Tell me what brings you here." I opened my folder and laid the documents out between us. The deed to my home, insurance papers, my will. Then I placed the medical note from the clinic, the diner receipt with Hank's scrawled name, and the slip of paper with the police case number. One by one, I told her what had happened. My son, his wife, the woods, the laughter in my own kitchen. Ava listened without interrupting, only jotting notes in tight handwriting. When I finished, the room was silent except for the hum of the ceiling fan. "You did the right thing," she said at last. "You already have documentation, medical, witness, police. That's excellent. It gives us leverage." "Leverage for what?" I asked. She leaned forward, folding her hands. "For drawing boundaries. First, we revoke any powers of attorney you may have given your son. Do you have one?" "Yes," I admitted. "After George died, Ethan convinced me it was safer. He handles some bills online." "Then that ends today," she said firmly. "Second, we file a trespass notice. It will put him and his wife on written notice that they're guests in your home only by your permission, which you can withdraw at any time. Third, we prepare a petition for a temporary restraining order on the basis of elder abuse, abandonment, intentional endangerment. The judge will want evidence. You already have it." Her words settled over me like stones clicking into place. Practical, clear, ruthless, but fair. "And after that?" I asked. "If they refuse to leave your house," she said, "we file for an unlawful detainer, an eviction. Legally, they have no claim to your property. You own it outright. You're in a strong position." I nodded slowly. The weight in my chest loosened a little. Ava studied me. "I know this isn't easy. Most of my clients your age would rather stay quiet than face the storm." I met her gaze. "I've stayed quiet too long. Silence nearly cost me my life last night. I won't give it another chance." For the first time, Ava smiled. "Then we'll start today." I'll draft the revocation of power of attorney and the trespass notice. You'll need to sign in front of a notary, but that can be arranged. I'll also prepare the TRO petition. We'll need your witness, Hank, and your medical note. He'll testify, I said. Good. She closed her notebook with a snap. One step at a time, Mrs. Whitfield. But you've already taken the hardest one. You walked through the door. As I left her office, the city street felt different. The same cracked sidewalks, the same stoplights, but lighter somehow. For the first time in years, I was not just drifting along with what my son and his wife decided. I was steering. Outside, a bus rumbled past, teenagers laughing in the back seats. I clutched my folder tighter and hailed a cab. The driver asked where to. Home, I said. And then, after a pause, but not alone. I'll be needing police standby. Because when I walked back into my house, I would not be returning as a guest in my own life. I would be returning as the owner. The officer who met me at the curb was a solid man in his 40s, his badge gleaming in the noon sun. Mrs. Whitfield? He asked. Yes, I said, steadying my voice. I'm Officer Delaney. Dispatch said you requested a civil standby. That means I'll be here to keep the peace while you go inside. You have paperwork? I held up the envelope Ava had prepared that morning. The revocation notice, the trespass warning, her letter of representation. My hand did not shake as I passed it to him. Good, he nodded. We're not here to evict anyone today, but they'll know this is official. Ready? We walked together up the porch steps. The door swung open before I could use my key. Ethan stood there, arms crossed, face tight. Camilla hovered behind him, her eyes sharp as broken glass. What's this about, Mom? Ethan demanded. His tone was already defensive, too loud, as if volume could erase guilt. Officer Delaney spoke before I could. Sir, your mother has asked for my presence to ensure a peaceful entry. She has documents for you to review. You'll need to accept them. Ethan's eyes flicked from the officer's badge to the envelope. His jaw worked. This is ridiculous. I stepped forward, placing the papers in his hand. Not ridiculous, necessary. Camilla snatched the top page and scanned it. Her face flushed. Trespass notice? Are you serious? We live here. No, I said evenly. You stay here because I allowed it. That allowance has ended. You have 30 days to vacate. After that, the court will handle it. You can't just throw out your own family, Ethan snapped. I can, I replied, because this house is mine, and because leaving me in the woods was not family. It was cruelty. For a moment, only the ticking of the hallway clock filled the air. Then Camilla slammed the papers onto the table. This is insane. Officer Delaney cleared his throat. You've been given notice. The next steps will go through the courts. Today, we're just here to prevent conflict. Understood? Ethan muttered something under his breath but didn't push further. His eyes slid away, just as they had when I confronted him the day before. I walked into my bedroom, gathered a few essentials, a change of clothes, the jewelry box that had belonged to my mother, a stack of letters George had written me during his army years. I carried them out to the car waiting at the curb. The officer stood by silently, watchful. As I locked the trunk, Ethan came out onto the porch. His voice was lower now, strained. Mom, please. Let's talk about this. We can work it out. You don't need lawyers, police. I turned to face him, the sun hot on my back. You're right, Ethan. I didn't need them. I needed my son. But he left me in the dark. He flinched as if I'd struck him. Camilla appeared in the doorway, arms folded tight. Fine. Go play the victim. You'll regret this. No, I said. my voice calm as a blade. The only regret I carry is that it took me this long. Officer Delaney touched the brim of his cap. All set, ma'am? Yes, I said. I slid into the back seat of the taxi. As we pulled away, I looked back once. Ethan stood on the porch, head bowed. Camilla hissed something into his ear. The papers lay crumpled on the table behind them. But I didn't feel pity. I felt clarity. In my lap, I held Ava's card. Tomorrow, we would file the petition for the restraining order. Step by step, document by document. Each one another nail closing the door on the life where I was treated as expendable. I had been left behind once. I would never allow it again. The next morning, I walked into Riverbank Trust with my folder tucked under my arm. The bank had always felt like neutral ground, a place of numbers and signatures where emotion had no place. That suited me fine. I wanted no emotion, only clarity. The receptionist recognized me. Good morning, Mrs. Whitfield. Do you have an appointment? Yes, with Mr. Lawson, I said. He had managed my account since George's death. Always polite, always efficient. Soon I was seated in his office, its shelves lined with binders and framed certificates. He adjusted his tie when he saw the folder. What can I do for you today? I need to revoke all access my son has to my accounts, I said plainly. Any powers of attorney, any joint authorizations. Everything ends today. He blinked, then leaned forward. All right. Do you have documentation? I slid Ava's letter across the desk, then the notarized revocation form she had prepared. He studied them, his expression tightening into professionalism. Understood. We'll update the records immediately. Ethan Whitfield will have no authority to move or view your funds from this point forward. Good, I said. I also want to suspend all automatic transfers, utilities, mortgage, credit cards, anything tied to their names or addresses. I will take over only my own bills, nothing more. He nodded. That will take some time to sort. You've had several recurring payments for them. Car loans, insurance, school tuition. I know, I said. I want them all stopped. Today. As he typed, I glanced around the office. On his desk stood a framed photograph of his children, 2 young girls in school uniforms. For a brief second, my chest ached. Family is supposed to be simple. A parent provides, a child grows, gratitude flows quietly between them. But mine had twisted into something else entirely. Dependence without respect. Demands without end. Mrs. Whitfield, Lawson said gently, this is a significant change. Are you certain? I met his gaze. Yes. My family left me in the woods to die. They will no longer live off my name. He inhaled sharply, but asked no further questions. His fingers moved swiftly over the keyboard, each keystroke like the shutting of a door. By the end of the meeting, I held a new set of documents. Confirmation of revoked authority, a list of suspended transfers, temporary passwords to access only my own accounts. I placed them in my folder alongside the medical note and police case number. Evidence of a new life, piece by piece. As I stood to leave, Lawson said quietly, if you ever need added security, we can arrange a trust account. Something they can't touch, no matter what. I'll speak with my lawyer, I said. But thank you. Walking out of the bank, I felt lighter. My money was mine again. My life was mine again. Outside, the street buzzed with mid-morning traffic. Mothers pushed strollers, clerks carried coffee. Young men hurried to offices. I walked past them unnoticed, an old woman with a folder. None of them knew that inside those papers was a battle plan. At the corner, my phone buzzed. Ethan's number. I let it ring. Seconds later, another buzz, this time a message. Mom, please. Bills are bouncing. Camilla's furious. Call me back. I slid the phone into my purse without answering. The silence felt like armor. By afternoon, I was back at Ava's office. She read through the bank documents with a nod. Good. That closes their access. Next, we finalize the petition for the restraining order. We'll submit everything tomorrow morning. Her confidence steadied me. What happens after that? I asked. Then, she said, we prepare for court, and for the possibility they won't leave willingly. But you'll be ready. I folded my hands in my lap. My fingers still bore faint scratches from the branches in the woods. They had healed over quickly, but I welcomed the sting when I brushed them. Proof of survival. Proof of resolve. That evening, as I boiled potatoes for supper, the phone rang again. This time it was Camilla. I let it ring too. The potatoes bubbled, steam fogging the kitchen window. I ate alone at the table, the house quiet except for the hum of the fridge. For the first time in years, every bite was mine, untouched by obligation, unshadowed by guilt. By the next morning, my silence had become its own kind of weapon. I hadn't spoken to Ethan or Camilla since the officer escorted me home, and already the cracks were showing. The first call came at dawn. Ethan's voice was ragged, half whisper, half demand. Mom, the mortgage didn't go through. The bank says your authorizations are revoked. What did you do? I listened to the voicemail but didn't reply. By mid-morning, Camilla called. Her tone was syrupy at first. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Leslie. We're family. Families work things out. Then her voice sharpened. If you think you can just cut us off. The recording ended there. I didn't answer. I saved the messages. Evidence. By afternoon, their daughter sent a text. Grandma, Dad's upset. Mom says you're being unfair. What's going on? My heart squeezed. She was young, still learning that love can be twisted by others' voices. I typed carefully. Sweetheart, none of this is your fault. I love you. Remember that. Then I put the phone down. At Ava's office, we gathered everything. Medical report, police incident number, witness statement, bank confirmations, voicemails. She stacked them in a neat pile, her pen tapping the edge. This is good, she said. Documentation is power. Judges respond to facts, not feelings. Keep recording, keep saving. Every call, every message. I nodded. They won't stop. I know them. That evening, the storm broke. I was peeling carrots at the kitchen sink when headlights swept across the living room wall. A car door slammed, then another. My chest tightened, but I didn't move. A hard knock rattled the door. Mom, Ethan's voice. Open up. We need to talk. I set the peeler down and walked calmly to the door, not opening it. This is not the time, I said through the wood. Camilla's voice joined his, sharp as broken glass. You can't just lock us out. We live here too. No, I replied. You stay here because I allowed it. That ended the moment you left me in the woods. Silence. Then Ethan again, lower, almost pleading. Please, Mom, think about what you're doing. We can't manage without your help. The words hung in the air. Not we miss you. Not we're sorry. Only we can't manage without your help. I wrote the time on a pad by the phone. 7:46 p.m. Recorded their words in neat handwriting. Evidence. After a while, I heard their car start. Tires spat gravel. The night was mine again. I sat at the table with my cup of tea, steam curling into the air. Every part of me wanted to tremble, but I held still. Quiet was stronger than shouting. Silence was steadier than argument. The next morning, Ava filed the petition for a temporary restraining order. I signed each page with a firm hand. She gathered the stack and said, "It may take a few days for a hearing. In the meantime, document everything. They will try again." I walked home with the spring wind tugging at my hair. The marigolds in the flower bed were beginning to wilt, but I didn't mind. I had learned something more enduring than blossoms: boundaries. At noon, another message buzzed on my phone. Ethan's voice this time, brittle with anger. "You're making a fool of yourself. Everyone's talking. Do you really want this dragged through court? Think about your granddaughter." I pressed save. Evidence. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. The house creaked, familiar and solid, the beams above me older than my son's marriage, older than Camilla's malice. This house had been built with George's hands, held together with our years of labor and sacrifice. It would not be taken from me by people who had forgotten what loyalty meant. The phone buzzed again. Another voicemail, another plea, another veiled threat. I let it go. Each one was another brick in the wall I was building, not around myself, but between me and those who mistook my silence for weakness. The courthouse smelled faintly of old wood and floor polish, the kind of scent that clings to buildings where thousands of lives have been argued and judged. I sat on a hard bench outside courtroom 3B, my folder of documents resting in my lap. My hands were steady. I had prepared for this moment, piece by piece, paper by paper. Ava arrived just before the clerk called us in. She gave me a brief nod. "Short hearing," she whispered. "Don't be nervous. Just speak plainly. Let the evidence carry the weight." Inside, the courtroom was almost empty. A judge sat high above us, spectacles perched low on her nose. To one side, Ethan and Camilla sat together. Ethan looked worn, his tie crooked. Camilla, though, wore her defiance like armor, eyes narrowed, jaw tight. "All rise," the clerk intoned. We stood. Then the hearing began. Ava spoke first. She introduced me by name, then laid out the request, a temporary restraining order under the elder abuse statute. Her voice was calm, precise. My client, Mrs. Leslie Whitfield, was intentionally abandoned during a family camping trip by her son's wife. She was left overnight in the woods without food, water, or shelter. She survived only by reaching a highway and obtaining aid from a truck driver. Since then, her son and daughter-in-law have attempted to continue residing in her home, despite her express revocation of consent. Their actions constitute endangerment, exploitation, and trespass. The judge's eyes moved to me. "Mrs. Whitfield, is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said. My voice sounded smaller than I wanted, but steady. I was left behind. It was not an accident. Ava handed the judge the exhibits: the urgent care note, Hank's diner receipt with his phone number, the police incident log, the bank documents, and the saved voicemails. Each was marked and stacked on the bench. Ethan's lawyer, a thin man with a nervous cough, rose to speak. "Your Honor, this is a family misunderstanding. My client and his wife deny any intent to harm. They simply believed Mrs. Whitfield was following them back to camp. Any suggestion otherwise is a misinterpretation." Camilla muttered something under her breath. The judge lifted her gaze sharply. "Mrs. Whitfield's counsel has presented contemporaneous medical documentation and corroborating witness testimony. Do you have evidence to contradict it?" The lawyer shuffled papers. "Not at this time, Your Honor." The judge turned to me again. "Mrs. Whitfield, what relief are you requesting?" I took a breath. that my son and his wife be ordered not to harass or contact me outside of legal channels, and that they be barred from entering my home without my permission. The judge considered for a long moment. Then she nodded. The court finds sufficient cause to grant a temporary restraining order. Mr. and Mrs. Whitfield, you are to have no direct contact with the petitioner until the matter is reviewed at a full hearing. You are further prohibited from entering her residence or its grounds unless specifically invited. The clerk typed rapidly. The sound of the keys was like nails sealing a coffin. Camilla gasped. Ethan lowered his head into his hands. The judge's gavel fell. So ordered. We filed out into the hallway. Ava touched my arm lightly. That's a good first step. They'll rage about it, but the law is now on your side. Enforcement is possible if they try anything. Ethan caught my eye from across the corridor. His mouth opened as if to speak, but the deputy stepped between us, reminding him of the order. He looked smaller in that moment. His shoulders hunched. Camilla tugged at his sleeve, her face pinched with fury. I turned away, walked slowly down the courthouse steps, and drew in a long breath of cool air. The sky was overcast, but to me it felt bright. For the first time, I had not begged or pleaded or explained. I had simply stood and told the truth, and the truth had been enough. The courier arrived 2 days later, a young man with a clipboard and a stiff expression. Mrs. Whitfield? He asked. Yes. He handed me a thick envelope. Service of notice. Please sign here. I scrawled my name, thanked him, and shut the door before I opened it. Inside were Ava's carefully prepared papers. Notice to quit and terminate license to occupy. 30 days. Clear, unmistakable language. They were no longer tenants, not family guests, not anything but occupants without rights. That afternoon, the same courier walked up my driveway again, this time carrying a second envelope addressed to Ethan and Camilla. He knocked, but they didn't answer. He tucked it into the screen door and took a photograph for proof of service. By evening, the storm broke. Ethan called first. His voice was tight with barely restrained anger. Mom, what are you doing? We're family. You can't just throw us out like criminals. I listened until he paused for breath. Ethan, I said evenly, you left me in the woods. You are living in my house without permission. The law calls that trespassing. The law is what I will follow now. You'd really put your own son on the street? No, I replied. I'm giving you 30 days. After that, the court will do it for me. The line went dead. Minutes later, Camilla's number flashed. I let it ring. Then another. Her message sharp as knives. You're humiliating us. Do you think the neighbors won't talk? You'll regret this. I saved the voicemail. Evidence. That night, I sat in the living room with the windows open. A warm breeze drifted in, carrying the smell of cut grass from somewhere down the block. My house felt different, still heavy with their presence, but lighter with the knowledge that their time here was numbered. The next morning, I stepped onto the porch and saw Camilla across the street, speaking animatedly to a neighbor. She glanced at me, her smile tight and false. I didn't wave. I didn't need to. Inside, I called Ava. They won't leave willingly, I said. I didn't expect them to, she replied. We'll file the unlawful detainer once the 30 days pass. Until then, keep documenting. Every call, every threat, every refusal to comply. The days blurred into a rhythm. Ethan sent long texts filled with half apologies and half demands. Camilla left notes on the counter in sharp handwriting. We belong here. You can't erase us. I photographed each one, slid them into a folder marked Exhibit C. Once their daughter came to my room at night. She stood in the doorway, clutching her phone, her eyes wide and uncertain. "Grandma, why are you doing this? Dad says you're trying to ruin us." My heart ached. I motioned her closer, stroked her hair the way I had when she was small. "Sweetheart, I'm not ruining anything. I'm protecting myself. And one day, you'll understand why that matters." She didn't answer, but she didn't pull away either. That was enough. By the second week, Camilla stopped speaking to me altogether. She moved through the house like a shadow, her eyes burning holes in my back. Ethan alternated between pleading and fury, his words a carousel of contradictions. "We need you. You've abandoned us. You're cruel. Please reconsider." I saved them all. Evidence. On the 23rd day, I found a stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen counter, their names scrawled at the top. Camilla must have left them there deliberately, as if to remind me of what I had once covered. I looked at the overdue notices, the red print shouting "past due," and then slid the stack into my folder. Not my problem anymore. Each night, I walked through the quiet rooms of my house and imagined it clean again, free of their voices, free of the tension that clung like dust. I pictured curtains open to sunlight, the smell of polish and soap, the sound of nothing but my own footsteps. It was coming. I could feel it. The law moved slowly, but it moved. And I was patient. On the 31st day, Ava filed the papers. Unlawful detainer, petition to recover possession of real property. The words were dry, bureaucratic, stripped of sentiment. That was what I wanted. No drama, only fact. We sat in her office, the morning light slanting across her desk as she read each page aloud for my signature. "This is the formal step," she said. "The court will set a hearing. You'll present your evidence, the deed, the notices, the restraining order, the documentation of their refusal to vacate. They will try to argue, but the law is on your side." I signed, my pen scratching across the heavy paper. When the last line was done, I slid the document back to her. My name looked firm. Final. "Now," Ava said, "we need witnesses. Someone outside your family who saw or heard relevant events. The truck driver, of course, the urgent care staff, and anyone who saw Camilla return without you that night." I thought of my neighbor, Mrs. Keegan. She had been watering her azaleas when they all returned from the camping trip. Ethan carrying coolers, Camilla slamming the car door, their daughter trudging behind with her backpack. Mrs. Keegan had waved at them, then glanced toward my driveway, puzzled. Later, she told me she thought I was napping. "She'll testify," I said. "She saw them come home without me." "Good," Ava replied. "That helps establish intent. Jurors and judges both trust neighbors, their ordinary eyes." We spent an hour assembling the exhibit list. My deed, the trespass notice, the TRO, the medical note, Hank's statement, the diner receipt, the police case number, the saved voicemails, Camilla's notes, and now Mrs. Keegan's affidavit. Piece by piece, a wall too solid for them to climb. When I returned home that afternoon, Ethan was in the kitchen. He held a stack of letters, past due notices, collection warnings. His face was pale. "Mom," he said, voice cracking, "we can't pay these. The house, the car, the loans, they'll ruin us." I set my purse on the counter. "You should have thought of that before you ruined me." His shoulders sagged. For a moment, he looked like a boy again, the boy who once clutched my hand on the first day of school. But that boy was long gone. This man was not helpless. He was entitled. Camilla stormed in, eyes blazing. "You won't win. Judges see through sob stories. You're old. They'll think you're confused, bitter." No one believes old women anymore. I met her gaze. The judge will believe the documents. Paper doesn't forget, and I have every page I need. She hissed, but said nothing more. That evening, I sat at my desk, spreading the papers across the surface. My life reduced to folders and receipts, signatures and seals. For years, I had thought of myself as weak for clinging to order, for keeping every document neat and filed. But now I saw the truth. Order was not weakness. Order was survival. When the court date arrived in the mail, a plain white envelope stamped with the county seal. I held it in my hand for a long time before opening it. The hearing was set for 3 weeks from Tuesday. 3 weeks. 21 days. That was all that stood between me and freedom. I placed the letter on top of the stack, turned off the lamp, and went to bed. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without waking, because the law was moving. And this time, it was moving with me. The courthouse was colder this time, or maybe it was just me. I wore my navy coat, the one George used to say made me look like a woman who knew her own mind. I carried my folder, heavier now with affidavits and transcripts, each page a stone I had laid in a wall between myself and those who tried to break me. Courtroom 2C was crowded with people waiting for their cases, landlords with folders, tenants with plastic grocery bags of belongings, lawyers juggling phones and files. When our case was called, I rose slowly, every joint stiff but my back straight. Ava walked beside me, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Ethan and Camilla were already at the table across from us. Ethan looked drained, his suit rumpled. Camilla was sharp as ever, lips pressed tight, her stare fixed on me as though she could burn holes through my skin. The judge, a silver-haired man with weary eyes, called the case number. Petitioner, Mrs. Leslie Whitfield, seeks possession of her residence from occupants Ethan and Camilla Whitfield. Ava stood. Your Honor, the facts are simple. Mrs. Whitfield owns the property outright. She has served a 30-day notice to quit, which was ignored. She has revoked any prior permissions. She has also obtained a temporary restraining order on the grounds of elder abuse, which remains in effect. The respondents have no lease, no ownership, and no legal right to remain. She placed the stack of documents on the bench. Each page was marked, indexed, impossible to ignore. The judge turned to Ethan's lawyer, a different man this time, older, heavier, with a voice that carried, Your Honor, my clients are family. They contributed to household expenses, cared for Mrs. Whitfield, and reasonably believed they had a right to reside there. Eviction is extreme. Ava replied, her tone crisp. There is no evidence of financial contribution. In fact, the opposite is true. Exhibit B contains bank records showing Mrs. Whitfield paid their mortgage, car loans, and tuition for years. Exhibit C includes her notice to quit, served by courier with proof of service. Exhibit D contains sworn witness testimony that Camilla returned from the camping trip without Mrs. Whitfield, and that she was later found miles away, dehydrated and injured. This is not care, this is exploitation. The judge leafed through the exhibits. The room was silent except for the shuffle of papers. Then he looked at Ethan. Mr. Whitfield, do you dispute your mother's ownership of the house? Ethan shifted in his chair. No, Your Honor, but do you have a lease agreement? No. Did you pay rent? His voice dropped. No. The judge leaned back, folding his hands. Then you have no legal right to remain. Camilla shot to her feet. We're family. She's exaggerating. The judge's gavel struck once, sharp. Sit down, Mrs. Whitfield. This is not a family therapy session. It is a court of law. Her face flushed crimson. She sank back into her chair, muttering under her breath. The judge turned back to me. Mrs. Whitfield, the court grants your petition for possession. A writ of possession will be issued to the sheriff's office. The respondents will be ordered to vacate the premises within 10 days, or they will be removed. The words rang like church bells in my ears. 10 days. I bowed my head slightly. Thank you, Your Honor. The gavel struck again. Case closed. As we filed out of the courtroom, Ethan tried to catch my eye. His mouth opened as if to speak, but no words came. Camilla stalked ahead, her heels clicking like gunfire on the marble floor. I didn't slow. I didn't waver. My folder was lighter now, not because the papers were fewer, but because the burden they carried was no longer mine alone. The law had taken it. Outside, the sunlight was blinding. I breathed it in, deep and sure. 10 more days, and the house would be mine again. The notice from the sheriff came 2 days later. Execution of writ of possession, scheduled for Friday at 9 a.m. A plain sheet of paper, but it carried the weight of finality. I set it on the kitchen table and smoothed the creases. 10 days had dwindled to 3. Camilla moved through the house like a storm cloud, slamming doors, muttering under her breath. Ethan avoided me entirely, his footsteps heavy in the upstairs hall. Their daughter stayed in her room, her music playing low, her silence louder than any argument. On Thursday night, I heard them packing. Suitcases dragged across the floor, drawers opening and shutting. But in the morning, their things were still here. Shoes by the door, coats on the hooks, boxes stacked in the hallway. Staging defiance, hoping I would fold at the last moment. I didn't. Friday dawned gray, the air damp with spring rain. At 8:55, a white sheriff's van pulled into the driveway. 2 deputies stepped out, their uniforms crisp, their expressions professional. Behind them was a locksmith, his tool bag swinging at his side. Ethan opened the door before they knocked. His face was pale, his voice brittle. "We're still packing. We need more time." The lead deputy shook his head. "The court order is effective today, sir. You've had 10 days. You'll need to vacate now." Camilla appeared behind him, her hair uncombed, her fury sharp enough to cut. "This is outrageous. She's our mother. She can't do this to us." The deputy held out the writ, his voice calm. "She can, and she has. You'll need to collect your belongings and leave the premises. We'll monitor while you do." For a moment, I thought Camilla might lunge at me. Her eyes burned, her mouth twisted, but Ethan pulled her back. His voice cracked. "Let's just go." They moved through the house, grabbing bags, shoving clothes into boxes. The deputies watched silently, arms folded. I stood by the kitchen window, staring at the rain streaking down the glass. Each drop slid lower, steady, inevitable. When the last box was carried to the car, Camilla turned to me. Her voice was low, venomous. "You'll die alone in this house. Don't think this is victory." I met her gaze without flinching. "Alone is better than betrayed." She hissed, but Ethan pulled her toward the car. Their daughter lingered for a moment, her eyes wide and wet. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Finally, she whispered, "Goodbye, Grandma." My throat tightened, but I only nodded. She turned and followed her parents down the steps. The deputies waited until the car pulled away, its tires spitting gravel down the street. Then the locksmith knelt by the door, his tools clicking. Within minutes, the locks were changed, the old keys useless, He handed me a new set, the metal still warm from his hand. "It's yours again," he said simply. I closed my fingers around the keys. The deputies wished me well and left. The van's taillights vanished into the rain. The house was silent, utterly, beautifully silent. I walked from room to room, the emptiness echoing around me. No muttered complaints, no slamming doors, no footsteps overhead. Only the soft creak of the floorboards and the hum of the refrigerator. In the living room, I opened the curtains wide. The gray light filled the space, washing away the shadows. For the first time in years, the house belonged only to me. The morning after the sheriff left, I brewed tea in my kitchen and listened to the house breathe. It was the first time in years the walls sounded like themselves. No shouting, no hurried footsteps, no doors slamming in anger. Only the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of the old clock on the mantel. I began with the small things. The sink full of their unwashed dishes, stacked high and sticky. I rolled up my sleeves, filled the basin with hot water, and scrubbed until the plates gleamed. Each one that clattered into the rack felt like reclaiming another corner of my life. Next, the hallway. Their shoes were still there, a jumble of sneakers and boots, some with mud caked thick from our camping trip, the trip that nearly became my grave. I placed them in a garbage bag and set it on the porch. Their coats followed, and the sharp scent of Camilla's perfume drifted away with the cool morning air. I worked slowly, methodically, room by room. In the upstairs bathroom, I found her cosmetics spread across the counter, her hairbrush tangled with long strands. Into the bag they went. In the guest room, Ethan's suits hung limply in the closet, their shoulders dusty. I left them for the deputy's inventory list. If he wanted them, he would have to collect them under supervision. By noon, I was tired, but it was the kind of tired that comes with purpose, not despair. I opened all the windows. The house exhaled, stale air drifting out, spring air rushing in. Mrs. Keegan stopped by with a basket of bread. She peeked into the doorway, her eyes widening at the bare rooms. "So it's true," she whispered. "It's true," I said. My voice held no triumph, only steadiness. She patted my arm. "You did the right thing. I've watched them walk all over you for years. George would be proud." I swallowed hard, nodding. "I hope so." After she left, I sat on the porch swing with a notebook on my lap. For the first time in months, I wrote a list for myself. Not bills for Ethan, not reminders for Camilla, but my own tasks. Call Ava about the trust. Schedule the roof repair. Order paint for the living room. Simple, practical things. My life in my own handwriting. In the evening, I wandered into the kitchen and made myself supper. Not a rushed meal to accommodate someone else's schedule or preference. Just what I wanted. Potatoes, a piece of fish, a slice of cucumber with salt. I ate slowly at the table, my fork tapping softly against the plate. When the dishes were washed and the kitchen light turned off, I walked upstairs. The guest room door was ajar. I pushed it open and stood in the threshold. For months, it had felt like a room borrowed by strangers. Now it was mine again. I imagined fresh curtains, a quilt on the bed, maybe a small desk by the window, a space for quiet, for writing, for remembering. The night settled heavy around the house. I slipped beneath my own quilt, the air cool against my skin, and closed my eyes. No raised voices downstairs, no whispered plotting, no weight pressing me into silence. Only the sound of rain against the roof, steady and patient. And for the first time in years, I felt at home in my own home. On the third day of quiet, the doorbell rang. I dried my hands on a towel and opened it to find Sophie standing there, backpack slung over one shoulder, her eyes red-rimmed. "Grandma," she said softly, "can I come in?" I stepped aside. She slipped through the doorway like someone afraid of being seen. For a moment, she just stood in the hall, staring at the familiar walls as if they'd become foreign. "I didn't know if you'd want to see me," she said. "Of course I do." I guided her toward the kitchen, poured her a glass of water. "You're always welcome here." She sat at the table, twisting the strap of her bag. "Dad says you've cut them off, that you've ruined everything. Mom says you'll regret it." Her voice cracked. I don't know who to believe. I sat across from her, folded my hands. Believe what you see with your own eyes. I was left in the woods, Sophie, alone. That wasn't an accident. And when I came home, they were living here as if nothing had happened. Her eyes widened. "Is that true?" "Yes," I said. "And I've spent too many years pretending I didn't see what was in front of me. I won't pretend anymore." Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't want to lose you, Grandma." "You won't." I reached across the table, took her hand. "But you might have to learn to see your parents clearly. That's not easy for anyone, least of all a daughter. I'm not asking you to take sides. I'm asking you to know the truth." She was silent for a long time. Finally, she nodded. "I've always known Mom didn't like you. She said things when she thought I wasn't listening. And Dad, he never stood up for you. I just didn't want to believe it." I squeezed her hand gently. "Wanting to believe the best is not a weakness, Sophie. But refusing to see the truth is." We sat in quiet, the old clock ticking on the wall. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the air clean and sharp. "Grandma," she said suddenly, "what happens now?" I leaned back in my chair. "Now I put things in order. The house, the finances, the future. I'll be speaking with my lawyer about a trust. Something that protects this house from anyone's grasp. And I'll be changing my will. Not to punish, but to protect." Her eyes searched mine. "Will I?" "Yes," I said gently. "You will, because you've shown me respect when others didn't, and because you listened." Her lips trembled, then she smiled, a small, brave smile. She stayed the afternoon, helping me fold laundry, sweeping the porch. We didn't talk much more about Ethan or Camilla. Instead, we talked about her classes, the books she was reading, the friend who wanted her to join the debate team. I listened, truly listened, and the house felt alive again. When the sun dipped low, she stood to go. At the door, she hugged me tight. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not shutting me out." I held her close. "You're my granddaughter. Nothing they do changes that." She left, her steps light on the path. I watched until she disappeared down the street, then closed the door. Inside, the house was quiet again, but not empty. Her presence lingered, warm as sunlight on the walls. That evening, I took out my pen and began drafting notes for Ava. Trust provisions, inheritance clauses, protections. My handwriting was slow, but steady. Each word was a promise to myself, to Sophie, to the future I would shape with my own hands. For once, I was not planning out of fear. I was planning out of choice. The morning was bright, the air still carrying the cool of night. I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, steam rising in the golden light. My marigolds had perked up after the rain, Their orange faces turned to the sun. For the first time in years, I felt like the house was breathing with me, not against me. On the table beside me lay an envelope, already sealed, addressed to my son. I had written it the night before, in long, careful sentences. Not an apology, not an attack, just truth. Ethan, I began, the door is not locked against you, but respect is the price of entry. If you cannot give that, then this house will never again be yours to walk through. I will not let anyone diminish me. Not strangers, not neighbors, not even my own blood. I gave you a childhood, a home, an education. What you did with it was yours to decide. What I do now is mine. I told him about the trust I was creating, about Sophie's place in it, about the protections that would stand long after I was gone. I told him that forgiveness was possible, but only if it came with change. Not just words, not just pleas, but actions. When the ink dried, I folded the letter and slid it into the envelope. This morning, it waited beside me, ready for the post. The house behind me was silent, but not empty. Its silence was mine, chosen, steady. The curtains fluttered in the breeze. The porch swing creaked gently, as if George himself were rocking it. I closed my eyes and felt the weight lift, not all at once, but slowly, like a stone set down after being carried too far. I had not won with shouting or vengeance. I had won by standing still, by refusing to bend, by remembering that dignity is not something others can grant. It is something you decide never to give away. I sipped my tea, the warmth spreading through me. The road ahead was mine now, quiet, perhaps, but honest. If you have ever been silenced, dismissed, or made to feel invisible in your own family, know this: you are not powerless. Paper leaves trails. Words matter, and dignity once claimed cannot be taken back. Tell me, have you ever had to stand your ground, even when it cost you? Share your story. Somewhere, another woman may need to hear it, just as you once needed to know you weren't alone.